The Book of Revelation, I mean, just the name brings up these wild images, right? Dragons, falling stars, epic cosmic battles. For centuries, it's fascinated and kind of mystified us. But what if the key to understanding all that powerful imagery isn't just in some far-off future, but in a catastrophic event from the deep past? Let's dig into that. So you gotta wonder, where did the author get these epic, totally surreal scenes? A beast rising out of the sea, a city just engulfed in fire, the entire sky rolling up like a scroll? Is this all just, symbolic poetry, or is it actually anchored in something real? Well, there's this one really compelling theory, and that's what we're exploring today. It argues that these visions aren't abstract at all. Instead, they're a theological reflection on a real, and for a lot of people, a largely forgotten historical disaster, one that was still a fresh, incredibly traumatic memory for the book's very first readers. To really get this, we've got to go back in time. We're heading back to the first century to explore the raw historical parallels between the fall of a real city and the apocalyptic visions in Revelation. So, the year is 70 AD. After a really brutal siege, the Roman army, led by General Titus, completely and utterly destroys the city of Jerusalem and its incredible temple. And when you read the eyewitness accounts, they don't just call it a battle, they describe it as an absolute catastrophe, a total inferno of horror. And get this, the historian Josephus was actually there. He saw it all. He wrote that amidst the mass starvation and the slaughter, people were hiding in sewers and underground vaults, literally begging for death just to escape the suffering. It's just a harrowing image of complete societal collapse. Okay, now hold that thought and listen to this verse from Revelation. It's describing the fall of a symbolic city called Babylon. Alas, alas, that great city, for in 1 hour she has made desolate. The language of sudden, shocking destruction, it's remarkably similar. The echoes are pretty much undeniable. And when you lay these parallels right next to each other, you can see how the historical reality of 70 AD almost reads like a script for Revelation's vision. The city as an inferno, check. The mass starvation leading to economic collapse, symbolized by the weeping merchants, check. And the pleas for death, mirroring that sudden desolation, check. So the crucial point here is that the author of Revelation didn't need to invent these horrors. He had a fresh, real-world blueprint to draw from. But here's where it gets even more interesting. For the early Christians, this disaster wasn't just a random tragedy. They saw it as the fulfillment of a specific prophecy, which gave it a whole other level of profound meaning. If you look at this timeline, about 40 years before the city's destruction, the Gospels record that Jesus explicitly warned his followers this was going to happen. And he gave them a specific sign to watch for, basically turning a prophecy into a literal survival guide. So what was the sign? He talked about an abomination of desolation, a profound desecration of the Holy Temple, and seeing armies surrounding the city. And the command wasn't vague at all. It was a clear, actionable instruction. When you see this, flee to the mountains. Don't wait. And that's reportedly what happened. The Christian community took that warning seriously. When the Roman armies first surrounded the city in 66 AD and then mysteriously pulled back, they saw that as the sign. They fled across the Jordan River to a town called Pella, and because they did that, they completely avoided the final, horrific destruction that came in 70 AD. Now, this isn't just some story passed down through oral tradition. The escape to Pella is actually documented by later historians like Eusebius and Epiphanius in the 4th century. And that gives real historical weight to the claim that this community was preserved because they paid attention to that prophecy. So this event, the catastrophe on one side and the miraculous escape on the other, it wasn't just a historical footnote. It became a theological blueprint, something that really shaped the core beliefs of the early church. This experience seems to have cemented 4 huge takeaways for the early church. First, it proved Jesus was a true prophet whose words you could absolutely trust. Second, with the stone temple gone, it really hammered home the idea that the true temple was now the community of believers. Third, it showed that obeying God's word brings tangible real-world protection. And finally, it served as a terrifying preview of what a future final judgment might look like. This brings us to a key concept called typology. Now, it might sound a little academic, but it's pretty straightforward. Typology is when a real historical event, like the destruction of Jerusalem, serves as a pattern, a preview, or a foreshadowing of a future, even bigger event. The first event is real, but it's also pointing to something more. And if you look closely at the book of Revelation with that in mind, what do you find? These exact same themes are its central pillars. The testimony of Jesus as the spirit of prophecy, the believers being called the temple of God, repeated promises of protection for those who endure, and of course, all that vivid imagery of a final judgment. It all lines up. So what's the big picture here? Well, when you connect all these dots, the disaster of 70 AD emerges as way more than just a historical backdrop. It starts to look like a foundational key to unlocking Revelation's entire message. So let's just recap the argument one more time. The historical parallels are undeniable. The prophetic fulfillment was a life-saving reality for a whole community, and the theological blueprint that it created provided the very themes that drive the book of Revelation. The case for 70 AD as a blueprint, it's pretty compelling. And this leaves us with a final provocative thought. It sort of reframes the whole question of prophecy, taking it from just predicting the future to something much more immediate. What happens when prophecy isn't just an abstract idea, but it becomes your practical guide for navigating a world in chaos?